Joining me now, Republican strategist and former senior advisor to Speaker John Boehner, Terry Holt. Terry, thank you. I often talk about the intersection of the law and politics. Let's talk about the politics here. How will what we've seen in this report and really the case as a whole, as the American public watches this play out in Georgia and the other cases against the former president, impact his poll numbers? Because so far, it doesn't seem to have done much.
No, and Donald Trump's grip on the Republican Party, particularly the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, is ironclad. This story today doesn't move the needle for anybody who thinks Donald Trump is getting a raw deal in these cases. But about 60% of the Republican electorate is looking for another candidate. And we have a race now for who is going to be the alternative to Donald Trump, particularly in these early states where it's possible to be competitive on the ground.
Right. And let's talk about that, because the primary is getting heated, right? We've already had a debate. We're looking for more from what these candidates stand for, their policies, how they work together on that stage, and what they'll do against Donald Trump. Couple of note, Senator Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, slowly starting to gain momentums, at least in some polls. What do these candidates need to do to get noticed, to actually have some traction?
Well, I don't know if it's getting noticed at the national level that's going to do it. In Iowa, you have a caucus state that is heavily reliant on grassroots activity, on hand-to-hand combat. I would recommend to those that think they're going to be the alternative to Donald Trump, they begin right now, if they haven't already, identifying county by county, precinct by precinct supporters so that they can be competitive there. And then be able to, with a little bit of money in the bank, leverage a strong showing in Iowa by getting some momentum in New Hampshire. I see all these candidates doing a lot of small p politics, doing all of the things like the parades and the door knocks and all of that. But what we will want to see by the election in the next year is a real honest-to-goodness ground game that gets people to those caucuses on those cold evenings.
The other question that we often hear right around now when the debates are starting to get interesting, Terry, is that candidates are using this as a platform to become Trump's running mate. Of the candidates that have been on the stage so far that are gaining some momentum, how would you respond to that?
Well, I would be very surprised if Donald Trump picked anybody that tried to run against him in the election, unless there were some clear, obvious reason for that there was a strategic political reason to do that. I just don't see it happening. I see Trump picking a Kristi Noem or somebody else from outside of the current group to help him. He's a force all his own. It's not like he has to coalesce the party around him in a way that a traditional candidate would, where a vice presidential pick would be strategic. I think that this is a race to be president, not a race to be vice president.
Well, Vivek Ramaswamy in particular has continued to make a lot of headlines over some controversial statements that he's made, his stance on Ukraine and funding and support for Ukraine.
Sure.
He's an outsider. Is that good or bad for him?
Well, he didn't show well at the debate. He came across as a sort of whiny and a little over anxious. But I think his role here is to try to take the wing of the party that is more isolationist, that is more concerned about internal dynamics. And so he is really trying to place himself on the outer edge of where Pence and Scott and Haley and the others are in terms of foreign policy.
How about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis? Some new strategies in their tool belt. The most recent is the super PAC backing him is spending millions of dollars on text messages, so trying to get out to younger voters in a new way. Is that a smart move?
It is. You've got to use all the tools that are available to you. But again, as I've said before, it doesn't replace the special hand-to-hand combat that has to take place in these early states. The text messages are part of an overall strategy, and I applaud that they're taking all of the advantages that technology offers, but it's still going to come down to a very personal fight on the ground in these early states.
Terry Holt, always appreciate our time. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.